Ladies and gentlemen, David Sears. I'm so excited that this interview happened. I want to know what Rainbow Six Patriots was going to be.
The premise was basically domestic terrorism is the greatest threat facing the United States. The enemy comes from within. It was going to be fantastic.
When did you kind of start to feel like things were getting rocky with the project?
I came in, did my usual thing, and it was really great for a while until it wasn't. There are plenty of stories about Ubisoft. I don't need to. I was like, I think people are going to people. And I'm like, I'm out.
You picked up a second job. You called it a corpse wrangler.
Yeah.
At the time. What the hell was going on at the time?
Oh my God. The funeral home I worked for has a crematory, and that's where Andre the Giant was cremated.
Really?
Yeah.
Have an extra big oven.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Push to Talk podcast, your premier FPS podcast, where we talk about everything from battle royales to extraction shooters to military shooters. I'm your host, BigfryTV, joined here today by Crash, as always.
What's up, man? I'm sorry I'm smiling so much, but I gotta see Bigfry actually kind of fanboy out a little bit today. So I'm smiling.
We have a special interview today. This is a Prox Chat episode. We're joined here today by the legendary David Sears. And yeah, I will say I fanboyed a little bit during the interview. This guy is obviously the creative director, a creative mind behind the early SOCOM game, SOCOM 1, 2. And actually, I found out he worked at Sony a lot longer than his resume actually says. Creative mind behind Rainbow Six Patriots before it was subsequently canceled. We'll get into that a little bit, as well as South of Midnight and his recent tenure at Compulsion Games and everything in between. A 35-year career. And it was a legendary interview.
Yeah, it's great. Really hope you guys enjoy it quite a bit. Before we get into it super quickly, can you guys do us a favor? Drop those 5-star reviews on the audio platforms. Hit a like on this video, share it around, be a friend, tell a friend. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this interview. We covered a lot of stuff, a wide aspect of stuff. And I mean, the guy even hauled dead bodies in real life for a living. And we talked about it. So I think without further ado, let's get into the Prox Chat.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest is, I need to read off of a script to introduce here. His DNA and fingerprints are all over the tactical shooter space as we know it. He's designed and crafted some of the most successful games of, my generation and beyond. He has an incredible 35-year career spanning SOCOM 1 and 2, Rainbow Six Patriots, recently South of Midnight, and is now the co-founder of Orphan Toys, a creative consultancy specializing in game design, lending his advice and expertise to help the next generation of game development talent. Ladies and gentlemen, David Sears. Nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, likewise. Same here.
Cool. Yeah, it's awesome to meet you, Mr. Sears, and just really appreciate your time and sitting down with us, because after reading that, you're probably a busy man. When you hear that intro and everything going on, and the accolades that Fry talked about, and that's kind of a quick summary, but what's one of the things that sticks out to you from that career and that list of works? One of your favorite things?
Wow, there was a lot. I mean, you said a lot. Very flattering. Thank you. It's weird, actually. I have never kept up with. I've kept up with game reviews for anything I work on, and I frame them as reminders that surround me to never become too arrogant, stay humble, because there's good and there's bad. And I thought about it the other day because South of Midnight was winning or is winning a bunch of awards, and I was like, there's like this LinkedIn spot you can put these things. And I think some of these games also won awards, like some of the older ones, the earlier ones. And I was like, yeah, they did. And thanks to AI, I now know all of the awards that my career has actually generated. It's very weird. So your intro was really flattering, but and I think the most terrifying aspect of it is it has been 35 years, and it has changed so drastically since
Yeah.
when we began. And it took me most of my career to really figure out my process and methodology, and how to reliably find inspiration, and here we are. So I'm updating LinkedIn retroactively, and
That's incredible.
feeling a little surprised. So there you go. SOCOM was obviously a highlight. I love talking about that franchise. But we can talk about whatever as long as I'm not under an NDA for it.
Yes. We'll try to avoid. We basically kind of. I've been doing kind of a deep dive and researching and trying to find some interviews that you've done recently with Greg Griffiths, and we've just been kind of looking around. You're not a very social guy in terms of the social media space. You kind of, from what I see, is you kind of shy away from interviews. So I'm actually really psyched that you responded to us here.
Well, thank you for having me. And you're
Yeah.
right, I have. I always felt like it didn't matter what the project was, but there
Yeah.
were junior designers or junior level designers or an audio designer who could use exposure more than I could, because
Yeah.
I was always working on something, but I would see younger people coming up and be like, you really should talk to this guy. I mean, he did a lot of work in the sound design, and it was great. So, and I'm kind of a hermit. I really don't like social anything. I keep getting asked occasionally. Okay, guys, it could happen more often, please, now that I'm into it. But I keep getting asked to do presentations at conferences, and I rarely do them because I don't like planes. I don't like traveling.
Man, I relate so much.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
fair.
it's like airports are insane, and
Yeah.
I don't want any part of that. But if you're going to go to Belgium from Ottawa, there's probably a plane involved. So I
Yeah.
do that kind of stuff more now because I have not done it, because I've wanted other people to benefit from the exposure more. But when you start a consultancy, you actually kind of have to talk to the public, and
Yeah.
it just comes with the territory. And also, I am less busy than I used to be, because the industry has evolved in such a way that while I always try to do something practical that I can point to in a game, like open Unreal and do some work, write the lyrics for all the songs, mostly what I ended up doing is having meetings to give direction about the vision and playing the game and giving notes. And it's been evolving that way for at least the last 15 years.
Yeah.
So if you work at a really big company with many teams, you end up in meetings all day, every day. And that's what you do as a creative director day to day. That's not how you come up with a vision and, intentions for your design or whatever. So the consultancy is either very, very busy, or we just talk about working on our own stuff, because we're going to do that too in our spare time. My
that's
partner
definitely
Max and I
something.
have been doing this forever. And we have this massive mental attic of projects we've always wanted to do. But, for whatever reason, people who are chasing you to make a tactical military shooter are not going to support you to make Babies Are Delicious, for example, which is inspired by the Jonathan Swift A Modern Proposal essay that he wrote about the potato famine. And, those things are kind of a hard sell. I'm just going to keep talking unless you stop me. So,
well, I do have a lot of questions kind of ranging back from early career. To me, you are the SOCOM guy. You created some of the most influential games of my lifetime. And when people talk about the game today, you've seen some of the awards. I know you were talking to Greg and you had mentioned SOCOM 2, I believe, was one of your first 10 out of 10 reviews, or at the time, for Zipper.
Yeah.
Crazy legacy.
Yeah. Well,
why do you think that nobody has been able to recreate that experience even up until today? We still have a void in our hearts for those kind of games.
Yeah. Well, thank you for noticing.
Yeah.
Wow, there's so many factors that have to come together for any game to meet the vision, to rise to the intentions. And SOCOM was at the confluence of just the right publisher, just the right studio and developers, and me being in that place at that time. And part of the reason SOCOM is it has a purity to it and an authenticity and realism that is rare because I mean, just for example, I came into it not being a huge shooter fan. They gave me really bad migraines and motion sickness and nausea, and that's why I hadn't played a lot of them, which is not to say they weren't good, although there weren't as many when Sony proposed making the kind of SOCOM game. And I was offered the job in spite of the fact that I had no experience doing that. So that was a miracle. It was a miracle for me. But I had to, the founders of the studio said, "Do you think you can make a tactical military shooter about Navy SEALs?" And I knew nothing. I knew nothing about the military. I knew nothing about SEALs. Knew nothing about firearms. I knew nothing about shooters, really, because they literally made me ill. And of course, being young and naive, I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to make that game. No problem." So I was hired to do it. They didn't have a lot of design. It wasn't really, what they had at the time wasn't really a tactical military shooter yet. And that's why they were looking for a lead designer. Shortly after I arrived, I was made creative director for the whole studio. And I did my usual deep dive into research, which was read everything about the U.S. military and its history and special forces around the world, not just the SEALs. Read SEAL memoirs, which were everywhere. You could get them at the checkout counter in grocery stores in that time. And I was like, I think we're onto something, not to use the overused word zeitgeist, but definitely there was pop cultural awareness about special forces at that time.
Oh, yeah.
So I was really encouraged. And the hardest part was I had to play all of the, relevant games. And I gave myself 6 weeks. I played them all, took a lot of notes, and overcame the whole nausea, motion sickness, migraine problem. I had to just power through it.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time, because it seemed important to me from the research, to research deeply and widely an accurate ballistics model for all of the firearms and the ammunition. And I remember the programmer, I made this massive spreadsheet. It's huge. I mean, it has thousands of data points and for every single weapon. And the programmer was like, "Do we really need all these parameters? Do we need all these variables?" And I was like, "Yes, I think we do." And we modeled all of it, onto which, we used a personal subjective filter based on what people think these firearms really behave like, AK-47, hard to control, sprays everywhere, but never breaks. And a lot of the subjectivity around shotguns and pistols and grenades. But SOCOM shipped, certainly SOCOM 1 and 2 shipped with an authentic ballistics model that was painstaking it was really very trying to get all that data, because, I would have to go to the manufacturer or find old reference books that had studied this. And then it led me to researching body cavitation, which is what happens when a bullet penetrates human flesh and what it does to organs. And it's really grim. So, I was like, we're not going to model body cavitation, but the amount of force that's applied to the human form when these rounds hit, that's the kind of exaggerated Hollywood reaction I want to see. Right. So I think that's why. First of all, I was naive, so I was a great template to absorb the sort of mythology and the ethics around U.S. Navy SEALs, and we had a great, set of consultants from those guys. I was open to, any kind of suggestion for features or mechanics from our producer, Seth Luisi. Yeah. And he, again, talk about having the right factors come together. When Seth would propose that we add something to SOCOM, like he's like, we should have a USB headset. And I was like, yeah thanks.
Yeah.
Well, I'll see you one USB headset and raise you one USB keyboard, because if we're going to support USB anything, you should also be people like me who don't want to talk to other people, but will type to them to tell them to, like, give me cover, I'm going now. Why not? And same with speech recognition. I was like, oh my God, what a nightmare. But I had designed the single player team user interface, team commands, to be subject, verb, object, because that's what made sense to me. If I were playing a tactical military shooter, I want to tell my teammates what to do as a group, in pairs, and singly. And it worked great with voice recognition. So all these things together, naive designer with too much energy and ambition, and an almost academic kind of approach to doing the research, like full immersion, method acting only for design. Great publishing partner, and a company that was willing to take a chance on the things I was saying that we should do, and had the technical and artistic chops to back it up. So that's why.
Lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, nobody had made a tactical military shooter at Zipper, and if they had, it wasn't one that everybody considered famous, a landmark title. They had done a great job on Crimson Skies, which is insanely fun in multiplayer. But it was a time where Sony had ambitions to, propagate and perpetuate the PlayStation brand, and they had a broadband adapter, and Zipper wanted to be, more successful than ever before. And Sony was willing to take chances, and Zipper was willing to take chances and listen to me. And, that's how it was, just a magical time.
Incredible.
That's awesome. So, like, you already touched on some of the things, but I want to tease it out just a little bit more. That whenever Navy SEALs dropped back in 2002, I feel like it really propelled like multiplayer shooters like into the mainstream. One of the first ones to put that. You already talked about some of the crazy systems that you guys worked on and got working on PS2 hardware. Which, just looking back on it now, is kind of insane. But what were some of the biggest technical and design challenges of like working with PS2 and stuff back then?
Okay, well, when we started, there was no hardware. It was really scarce. And the day the tool, it was called the tool. It was this massive space heater Dalek looking, thing. It was like the arrival of the monolith to the Neanderthals.
That was like your guys' dev kit at the time?
Yeah. And if you wanted to play the game, it had to be sent to Brian Soderbergh's office. He was chief of technology and one of the co-founders, because he had the first one. And I can tell you, I wasn't the second one to get one. It didn't last too long, because we clearly had to test multiplayer, and we also had to test our work. And it's all a bit shadowy now because it's been 25 years. But there was this period where like this really powerful hardware shows up and everyone's really excited, and Brian's off doing engine stuff and programmers are, putting in code and the engine's coming together. But the rest of us were building art in 3D Studio, and not me, but the art team. And because this was actually a good thing, because we didn't have just an embarrassment of dev kits yet, it gave me more time to do research and actually think about the design, which is often not available to you. And it was great because, and I'll sort of, I have to couch it this way. everyone was taking chances. We were taking chances. Sony was taking chances. But there's a huge, tremendous weight of responsibility when you're given the go ahead to do these crazy things, and you have to every decision you make in design or narrative or art, it's important, because if you fail, you may have failed forever. Right? There might
Right.
not have been a SOCOM, and so I was like walking the razor's edge between authenticity and fun.
Mhm.
And everything I do has humor in it. So if you listen to the conversations of the terrorist in single player, they say some, really dumb, crazy things, but also poignant. So, I kind of snuck that in there, but, it just worked. And in spite of the technology being such a mystery, I mean, it was like the clouds parted the first day we were playing a multiplayer game with people outside our local area network.
So cool, man.
Yeah, it was, and that took a while, but we were really smart and kept working on the things that were most important. And I designed single player to feed almost all of its assets into the multiplayer experience. So that's why you get to play terrorists and the butcher and,
Yeah.
all kinds of other random stuff. And that was like, ironically, the SEALs were like, yeah, that's cool. But there was more discussion around the studio. Should you really be able to play a terrorist? And I was like, I don't know. Maybe you'll see their point of view. And also, we'll just take turns. So everybody is going to die at some point, terrorists
Right.
and SEALs, unfortunately. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question about technology.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
No, it's great.
That's super cool. And that's another thing I wanted to touch on too. And you mentioned a little bit, you actually, for those who didn't know, you guys actually worked with Navy SEALs in developing this and consulted with them. What was that partnership like, kind of the dynamic of that, and what's something that surprised you from that collaboration with actual SEALs?
Okay, so, well, there's a lot, and they're super awesome. They really are, as far as I can tell, the best of the best at what they do. Um, but they're really, what I learned right away is they're really funny. I mean, you wouldn't think so, but
Right.
humor in what they do is important when they're not actually on the job. And it's the same in games, because if you're presenting like these serious scenarios where there's a lot of shooting of people, and terrorism is a very dark subject. That's why you sneak in humor around the edges wherever it will fit. So it was really cool to find that out about them, and they're incredibly smart. So I entered respecting them because I had researched what they did. And I was delighted when the respect was mutual, because I had put in the work, and I always, you do the research so that you can ask intelligent questions. And that's what we got. We got intelligent answers because we asked smart questions. So yeah, they were great. I will tell you that they are the motion capture actors. There were two SEALs, one retired and one active duty, that went with us to the Sony motion capture studio. I guess that's, what is that? San Diego. And they suited up, and they were, we had Doug Wilcox, who was the lead animator, and I went down, and we had this huge list of motion capture animations they needed to perform. And they were great at literally everything except dying. They were terrible.
That checks
terrible
out.
at dying. It was like, think about what being hit by a bullet feels like. And they're like, yeah, we don't like it. It hurts. And, and I'm like, okay, we're going to have to go more Hollywood, because that's the expectation, right? Just like you expect an explosion in space to make a sound, even though it doesn't really. You want to see the big spin and the exaggerated, Hollywood impacts and deaths. So that was me. I had to get in the suit, and
Oh, wow.
all the deaths are me.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
That's actually sweet. I didn't know that.
I rarely tell anyone, but it's one of my fondest memories. Those guys were great to
That's
work
awesome.
with. Yeah.
So as we know now, the series has gone on past SOCOM 1 and 2,
Mhm.
selling 13 million copies. It was the poster child for Sony's online gaming at the time.
Yep.
Did you in the moment, did you know and understand the magnitude of what this series was going to go on to do while you were making it? Did you have any inkling that you guys were creating something that was going to blow up to that size?
No, I mean we 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 were we were like, oh my god, please let's ship. And
You're right. Yeah.
you
I
know,
think that's how most game devs are actually.
yeah. Over time, as we got closer to the premiere at E3, where we
Yeah.
went on stage and demoed multiplayer for the first time and single player, which I did, it became more and more real. And we started thinking, yeah, this could be a modest hit,
Yeah.
and I don't know. Sony never actually said this. None of the producers ever told me, but my read on it was they thought it would do okay. They didn't know it was going to do great, but it was a safe bet. It was going to do, it was worth making. And it just blew up. And we were under contract to make a what would now be considered a DLC, like a map pack and some extra missions and some more characters or whatever.
Yeah.
As a follow-up. And we were working on it, and they said, oh, we want a full sequel. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, how much more time do we get? And they're like, same time, we want the whole thing. And we want it in the same 9 months. And I'm like, oh my God.
Wow.
So we did. That SOCOM 2 was built on all the learnings and the struggles and the tribulations from SOCOM 1. And everyone knew what they were doing, and it went so much faster. So we just kept doing what we learned.
Too. So much bigger, because I always reference the article when I talk about why we still don't have more SOCOM titles today. In 2004, SOCOM 2 had more daily player hours than all of Xbox Live. That's how massive that went. And you guys built that in 9 months, or less than a year's time.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't know if I would ever want to do it again, or if I should want to do it again, because it was a golden era working on PlayStation 2.
Well, so you stepped away after SOCOM 2. Go ahead.
I eventually left.
Okay.
But I was creative director for all the SOCOMs, the PSP SOCOMs, the PlayStation 2 SOCOMs, the PlayStation 3 SOCOMs, Mass Effect.
Really?
Yeah, I was the studio creative director. So all the other directors.
Okay. When did you leave Sony then?
Oh my God, I don't know.
That's fair.
About my breaking point, because in all seriousness, I've never worked on any game that in which my required reading list included The Economist magazine, National Geographic, and basically deep research into troubled parts of the world where people are oppressed or impoverished, and a hotbed for growing terrorism. And in order to predict and understand where terrorism would emerge and what our U.S. response, counterterrorism response would be, I got to know all these terrible things that were happening to people around the world. And I did this for like 6 years, I guess. And I'm too empathic that way, and I I needed a break. So I left.
Yeah.
I had, hopefully everything was set up for success, because we've been designing and building stuff for quite a while before I left.
Yeah. Okay. So I remember reading a Reddit AMA of yours a few years back. You had mentioned that later the SOCOM games kind of went off track of what you had envisioned. It kind of, went to a different roadmap. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but what were some of the things that you had hoped for that retained in the SOCOM games that kind of went off amiss, during the later games?
Well, yeah, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus either.
Yeah.
Here's what I think happened as
Yeah.
a spectator. I wasn't
Sure.
involved after I left, obviously. People were still doing really good work in the studio, but I felt like there were just too many projects underway, and shipping projects out of the magic circle where we made the first two opened the door to all potential dilution and
Right.
leaving the sort of getting off the golden path. So I think that's what happened.
Gotcha.
Because, you know, if I was working with you directly in the studio, you definitely got my philosophy about design. And, you know, I was really quick to say that's not authentic. And even though that's fun, it won't work for the whole, you know, the SOCOM umbrella.
Yeah.
But I wasn't there to do that. And I don't know. Yeah, I mean, not to make it all about me, but I felt like I knew what I was doing. So I could have just kept doing more of that, but I wasn't there. So, and eventually that was the studio went away. It was eventually dissolved because you can only not coast isn't the word. You can only keep a franchise alive for so long if it's not innovating or if it doesn't perpetuate the feeling that it gave you in the first few releases. So yeah. And by the end I did not play them. Sorry to say. I was like, yeah,
I can kind of understand that though. Yeah. We just shipped our first game in December, and I needed like 2 months to just not even think about it. So I totally understand that.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, when I was younger, I would play them.
Yeah.
With SOCOM, for example. Game comes out. I'm already working on SOCOM 2. I took a few days off working on SOCOM 2. Game is released. It's global. People all over the world are joining. And I'm like, I'm the best SOCOM player in the world because I knew everything about it. I knew all the best spots to launch grenades, and I knew the best places for cover, and I already knew the sight lines because I had done paper maps for all these things, and we played them a million times. So for the first week, I was like top 10. It felt like I was on top of the world. And then by the end of week 2, I was like, I'm glad you're enjoying it. And I just stopped.
That's awesome.
You know, and I just went on with SOCOM 2.
Yeah. Very cool.
I did read that you spent some time as an instructor at Ubisoft in Montreal. How did teaching other and up and coming developers change the way you think about game design? And also kind of a follow-up is, what's something you saw young developers consistently struggle with?
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. This is good for the next hour. Yeah. So first thing is very true what they say about teaching. You have to be the master of the subject. Otherwise you look like an idiot. So anything I thought I wanted to talk about and teach them, I had to do all this research and planning and these presentations. You know, I use PowerPoint in the classroom, and there was a lot of information because, you know, my colleagues who started in the industry in the very early 90s, and there were pioneers even before us, we were like, why is this fun? I don't know, but we should do more of it. And it's like, why is this UI confusing? I don't know. You know, who knows? Nobody knows. And we figured this out over the decades, right? And now you can there are textbooks, there are brilliant researchers such as Celia Hodan in UX design and brain and game theory, amazing stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it all makes sense now. And you can, sorry, my cameras. I'm waving my hands around too much.
The wind knocked it over.
Yeah.
Damn it. Sorry. So we were inventing stuff and figuring it out. And here are all these kids who want to be in games because I don't know. They have their reasons, and they have so much to learn. And I looked at the other classes and I'm like, oh, you're building levels, and oh, kind of learning art. This is the game design core class. And I'm like, I have 1 semester to teach you as much as possible. So it was legendary. They in terms of the download rate, because I learned later from the students that they were teaming up in groups of 5, and one would take one slide and would be trying to write down everything that was on the projector, while the next person in the chain would take the next slide.
Wow.
What I learned was most people really don't want to make video games, because the reality is harsh. And
Yep.
my real mission was to convince anyone who wasn't ready to not do it, and to do anything else creatively, or become a carpenter or a plumber or a lawyer or a doctor.
Wow.
Any other job that will make you happier, because it's fraught. It's full of traumas. Even though it's gotten a lot better than it was, 35 years ago, it's still, it's still grating, and it takes a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
energy that a lot of people aren't prepared to give. And I am not alone in having multiple divorces, and having to move across the country to chase the next big project, or a fun project, or interesting project. And a lot of people aren't ready for that. So that was my mission. That was the thing, the thing that I discovered time and again, that didn't really surprise me, but it should have not been an issue. They all thought it was going to be fun all the time. And I'm like, no, it's not fun. Most of it is not fun. This
Yeah.
class might be the most fun you have, in fact, in your journey.
Buckle up.
Yeah. So, I really tortured them. But I'm happy to say that it worked, and I taught for quite a few semesters, not just at Ubisoft, but the program migrated to a local college after Ubisoft stopped sponsoring it.
Cool.
And I taught there, and it was always the same. In every class, there were a few people who you identify as people you would want to work with on your team, and those are going to be stars, and they are. They've, some of those students are now stars in the industry, doing great work. And everyone else, we have world famous artists in traditional media. We have people who went on to get master's degrees in architectural history.
Wow.
One young lady bought a B&B in Nova Scotia. It's gorgeous, and she loves life and has a lot of cats. So she's awesome.
That's awesome.
She knows who I'm talking about. So the ones that made it through and did the work in the class and weren't terrified are doing great in the games industry now. So I don't know if that answered the question, but
no,
boy,
for
that
sure,
was
it's awesome.
It's great. Yeah, no, it's awesome. So after that, I know you had gone on to become creative director on Rainbow Six Patriots, which is another thing that I've been so itching to talk about.
Yeah.
I don't know if any NDAs have since lapsed. I don't know the situation there. Not a lot of people on the internet do. From your perspective, I want to know what Rainbow Six Patriots was going to be, because all we have to go off of was, I believe, a single trailer that you guys had announced back in, I don't even know what year it was at this point.
Yeah. So I can tell you what was in the Game Informer article.
Yeah.
There was like an 8 or 10 page article on Rainbow Six Patriots.
Okay.
And, the reason, I had this presentation that, conveyed the 4 pillars of the vision and gave gameplay examples and character examples, and really just told the story of it. And I pitched that to them, and they liked it enough to give it a wraparound cover. And that was pretty awesome.
That's cool.
I'd never gotten, they were the #1 publication in the world at the time. and our guys had done some amazing concept work, and our game design team was doing great work. I thought it was hot. It was really hot. And but the premise was basically domestic terrorism is the greatest threat facing the United States.
Yeah.
The enemy comes from within.
Mhm.
And I was saying this like 12 years ago now.
Yeah, something like that.
And it was going to be fantastic. And just for the record, I did not leak the fake game footage.
Okay.
The fake game footage, we were all really surprised. Now 12 years later, I'm glad whoever did it, because people got a glimpse into what the game was going to be.
Yeah.
I don't advise doing it. It's a career killer.
For sure.
If you get caught, don't do
Yeah.
that. But it was like, I had come to Ubisoft on a mission to reboot Rainbow Six. It had been in pre-production for a while, and
Yeah.
I came in, did my usual thing, and it was really great for a while until it wasn't. And that's all I can say about that.
Gotcha. I was
Sorry.
going to follow up and ask, when did you kind of start to feel like things were getting rocky with the project? But I don't want to step on toes. I know it's a minefield when it comes to this stuff. So
Yeah. So instead of leaving Ubisoft, I was offered, I will say, and purely from my point of view, I stuck with the vision. It was the vision that excited, Ubisoft management. And, people are people. They're going to people.
Right.
And
Yep.
so the next thing I was given was Assassin's Creed. And yeah. And I can't talk about that either. But, I was like, oh, I think people are going to people. And I'm like, I'm out. So
Politics.
yeah, and life is too short for that. I mean,
Exactly.
we've only got so many games that we can make.
Yeah.
Until I, acquire my immortal robot body and download my consciousness. I like, how many more can I do? I don't want to waste time on things that are, like pushing a boulder uphill. So yeah. I mean, there are plenty of stories about Ubisoft. I don't need to.
For sure. Messy. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
Sounds good.
A lot of good people, I have to say.
I believe that. Yeah.
You can't. Yeah. I feel like you can't get that far without, having a good team anyway.
Yeah.
So we could talk about your time at SOF Studios and HR a little bit. When you first got involved, what was the vision for that project from your perspective?
Oh, it was dead easy. It was make a spiritual successor to SOCOM.
Yeah.
SOCOM 2, more specifically. And, make it a lot prettier, and, take advantage of modern technology to move faster with a smaller team. And that's what we did. And the promise was, I'm going to make a proof of concept level that captures the spirit and the feeling of SOCOM. Had a bunch of guys from Kickstarter backers who came in, drove in many hours to play, and it was unanimous. We'd done it.
Yeah.
So that was the mission. My part was basically to be the creative director and make sure we could build a team, which we did. I was not the finance guy.
Yeah. I think the big point that I think a lot of people miss at that time was that you guys were building a proof of concept, and that was what the Kickstarter was going to be. And then you were going to shop that around to publishers, investors, or whatever to get the full backing.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we spent most of a year pulling that thing together, and then we brought everybody in, and it was like, yes, you did it. And that was another miracle. But we did it.
Yeah.
And after that, I stuck with it another year, and nothing materialized. And, I wasn't directly involved in almost any financial discussions. And I certainly wasn't, I wasn't making the money that I would have been making at Ubisoft or EA or Sony. In fact, I had to take a immediate salary cut, like almost to the day. Thank you, universe. Oh, we don't have enough money, so you have to take half. And I was basically a contractor. I didn't, I didn't have any other recourse. So I did that, and that's where my flirtation with the deaf industry began. For extra money. Oh my
I was
God.
going to say that there was a rumor because so this, just to let you know, this is where I kind of started my YouTube career, was covering H-Hour and the Kickstarter. And I'm a huge fan of SOCOM. So at the time, like, there were rumors going around that, and I believe you talked about it with Greg in his recent Substack. You picked up a second job. You called it a corpse wrangler at the time. I wanted to bring that up, but it was rumor, and that was stuff that we all kind of heard in the community through the grapevine.
Wow.
So then to hear you talk about it now publicly, it's like, okay, I have to ask, what the hell was going on at the time?
Oh my God. Yeah, it was like the best job I ever had. And, I was like, other than games, best job I ever had, because it was like games. It's like you learn the procedures, your process, and, you put on your game face, and you go out and you pick up decedents, and that's what we call, dead people in the business. And it's different every time. Every single time you will definitely see people at their worst. And I'm not talking about the decedents. I'm talking about the surviving family. And you never know what you're going to see. Some people rise above. Some people are just distraught, and other people are in shock. Some people it doesn't seem to affect at all. So that job, for the less than a full year I had this job, it was a window into the private, most poignant, or most honest part of their lives. And I never knew when the call was going to come. So I had my day job, obviously, H-Hour, but at evenings and weekends, I was like on call to go pick up decedents. And, I would be asked to work at funerals as a casket wrangler. I wore a suit more often for that job than I've worn suits in my entire life.
I believe that.
Yeah. And here's an amusing anecdote. The funeral home I worked for has a crematory, and that's where Andre the Giant was cremated.
Really?
Yeah.
Have an extra big oven.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
jeez.
Yeah, they don't tell you. Those things have it's still a mystery to me how he fit in there. But I do know there was it took a while to actually create remains. So anyway, yeah, I have a lot of stories, but they're they sort of belong to other people. I was just a spectator. But I got a bunch of game design ideas, level design ideas from some of the funeral homes and places we visited.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You never know where inspiration comes from.
You do not. I always just say yes.
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
I guess looking back, it was financials, I guess, is why you stepped away from the H-Hour project then.
Well, I mean, yes and no. It's like anything, even if you're getting paid, do you want to just keep doing the same thing and not really progressing? I kept doing research and fussing with the level and designing the next level, the next map. But like I said, you only have so many games in your career, and each one really needs to count. So you got to move on.
No, that's fair enough.
Is there something? I was just going to say, is there something looking back on that you would have done differently that could have maybe led to a different outcome?
Well, hindsight, it's great.
Yeah,
always is.
I will tell. I have one thing I would have done differently. Not only do I avoid social media almost religiously, vigorously, I avoid calling friends and contacts in the industry for help. Although a ton of people, I called in favors from a ton of developers who were kind enough to do work on that project um, on the Soft Studios project. I'm like at a favored deficit to this day because so many people contributed models and animations.
Oh,
and
really?
yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah. It was just
Interesting.
like the old days, right? When like Paul Ritchie would just call his friends in the industry and say, "Hey, I need music for Star Control 2. Can you write
Yeah.
something?" And everyone would pitch in. I didn't get to.
Right.
I didn't know him when Star Control 2 came out. But that it was very much a revival of that esprit de corps,
Yeah.
global networking, because we didn't have a lot of NDAs in the way. We didn't have corporate lawyers saying, "Oh, you can't talk to anyone about this game ever, anywhere, unless we tell you what to say." So I called in all markers, and people really helped out, and that's how we did it. The Kickstarter money was a good start, but
Yeah.
it was the charitable contributions of people in the industry who went above and beyond secretly to make it happen. And thank you guys. You snatched victory from the jaws of defeat there.
Man,
So what I regret
secretly isn't the word. Ooh, regret. Okay.
the regret. Yeah, I actually remembered your question finally. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, the thing I should have done was, instead of calling my friends to make things to make this thing happen, I should have called my friends and colleagues who could write the checks to make things happen. And while a bunch of friends did contribute a lot of Kickstarter money, behind, on their own, I should have, I talked to Connie Booth after the Kickstarter was up and running, and she's like, "David, why didn't you just call me? We probably could have done something together." And it was like, damn it. So there you go. Next time, Connie. And she moved on. I mean, just about
Lesson
everybody.
learned.
Yeah, Sony has moved on to other publishers now.
Yeah. If I can say, at the time, I a couple years, I believe, after you had left, I got access to the original prototype that you guys had built on Unreal Engine 3, I believe, at the time.
Yeah,
and it was incredible. Just as a SOCOM fan, and then just seeing, so many years later, I'm like, yeah, David still got it. It was incredible.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a little it was a mystery to me. I was like, yeah, I think, I could do it. Sure. Same guy,
Yeah.
Can you design, tactical military shooter? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
you can.
I just,
Absolutely.
just say yes.
Yeah, just say yes. That seems to be an ongoing thing in your career. Just say yes, and it's got you to where you're at. So
Yeah.
that's impressive.
So what led to Compulsion Games then? And like what all came together for that? Because you've been there almost as long now as, or you've been there as long as Zipper. So what drew you to that team and that and the projects for that?
Yeah. So okay. So the studio founder at Compulsion, Guillaume Provost, is a friend of mine, and we had first met at Pseudo Interactive in Toronto, and we stayed in touch over the years. He left to go work at I think Valve, maybe. No, something. It was Half-Life was involved, and the game never shipped. He moved to France from Toronto to work on that game, and then came back. And I, was working as a consultant because my studio had shut down. Of course, after I moved to Texas, it shuts down immediately. So he's like, "Hey, come hang out in Montreal, and when you're coming up to Toronto next time," because I was doing consulting work for a studio there. So I took the train to Montreal, and he's like, "Hey, come work on Compulsion. We need a design director." And I was like, "Oh,
wow,
okay, sure, why not?"
Yes,
Back to
again,
Montreal.
yes.
Another instance of yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So
what a change from tactical shooter to Rainbow Six to H Hour, and now We Happy Few. It's a complete tonal shift.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
Subject matter wise, it's something I have a pretty strong affinity for. I dialed the humor way up in that game, and it's just like it was more slapstick and absurdist. We were all channeling The Prisoner, the old BBC series with Doohan series. Have you guys ever seen The Prisoner?
I don't believe I'm familiar. No.
Feels a little bit like We Happy Few.
Fair enough.
But we just ran with that. And, when I got there, they had been working on it a while, and they had, were doing crowdfunding, and, you never know if are you going to make payroll? Maybe, probably keep working.
Yeah.
So we were always doing updates, and I think I designed a lot of systems and features for that game, some of which were fully implemented, some were not. The game still shipped. So I'll just leave that there. I was super proud of it because we shipped it. And it was, it did teach me that I never want to do a procedurally generated game again, because insane stuff would just happen. I was like, listen, we have to have these permanent sub-levels so that we can design gameplay, puzzles, challenges, traditional level design in a world that is procedurally generated. And it doesn't matter to me too much where they are on each of these islands, but we need to be able to do traditional gameplay that people like and expect, in addition to all the survival stuff, and the combat stuff, which is just, that's fun. This will be a differentiator for us, and the humor. And, things would spawn out in the ocean, underwater, and you had to, you can't get there, but you need to get there to progress, it was, the streets were like weird forever. And, we pulled it together, but I think I have on a hard drive somewhere my collection of comedy screenshots from developing and testing We Happy Few. It's too much. I'm much more of a if I want to make a story-based game, I want it to be wide linear or linear,
very handcrafted and
yes,
no, I feel that.
I'm dying to make an Inside or Little Monsters kind of thing, but
I can see that just based on some of the designs you see on your Orphan Toys website. We're going to get into that in a little bit. I see a lot of inspiration there. What was it like with We Happy Few? I'm going off script now, because that would have been your first time doing an early access development, correct? So you're working alongside the public and all of that feedback too. What was it like filtering that stuff out, figuring out what your player base wants, or was that not a factor for you guys?
No, it very much was. Yeah. I mean, you absolutely have to listen to the people that are, keeping the lights on.
Yeah.
But it's like what people think they want, and they believe they want it. Then there's also all the other stuff that you have to do just to make a game that holds together as a game.
Yeah.
And it's like going back to the, those students, I was talking about terrifying earlier. You think you want to do these things, but you don't have the big picture. But we want to honor your contributions financially and creatively. So we try to include and be inspired by as much of what they came up with. But it's like anything. People, producers from the publisher will come to you and say, hey, I had an idea for the game. And your job as a designer or creative director is to take the good from whatever people suggest, amplify it, and enhance it if you can. Just recognize that it's a better idea than what I wanted to do. In fact, it's so much in the vision, it bumps some of the lower tier items right out, and just let it go. I started sending a lot of Frozen memes in my older age, which is like, let it go. It's like their idea is good, and I didn't have to come up with it. But I know how to use it because I know where it fits into the structure of this whole game that we have to make. But it is stressful. I mean, you never know when you'll let people down. So you do the best you can and keep your ears open.
Well, speaking of not letting people down, we're going to segue to South of Midnight.
Oh yeah.
Critically acclaimed. You've won. We were talking about it earlier. You guys have won a ton of awards. Outstanding achievement in animation, new intellectual property. You won the Games for Impact at the Game Awards. What's one thing that you can take away from that project's timeline that just makes you the most proud or the most happy, or a memory of working on South of Midnight that just sticks in your mind?
There are a lot.
Yeah.
It's hard to come up with just one. I'm really proud of that game because I certainly have wanted to make it for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's no secret that I ran away from the South, the deep South, to make games in LA because I didn't think you could, you know, I didn't see the value in the culture and the terrain and traditions. And then as I grew older, I started remembering it very fondly, and then I appreciated it more and more. And I was like, why don't more people love the South like I do? So I wanted to make a game that, you know, sort of married my love of Southern Gothic literature from, you know, university and, you know, all of those hundreds and hundreds of hours of wandering around in abandoned pastures and forests and cryptids, you know, are weird legends and folklore. But, you know, the fact that I think the thing that most pleases me about South of Midnight is not all that stuff, which is great. It's that we found once again a publisher who wanted to do the hard thing. And the hard thing was, let's make a game that encourages empathy, right? You know, and it's like right there on the face of it. It's like, you know, help people the way they want to be helped. Don't just, you know, do what you think is right. You have to learn, you have to know your neighbors. And that's where it starts. So we can make the world better, but we can't just wave a magic wand and, you know, do a goodness reset for the whole planet. But you can make your neighbor's life better, and then they can make their neighbor's life better. And that's what South of Midnight was for me. It was being able to finally say in a public way as entertainment, you know, people are people. They're gonna people. But I think if you understand why they do what they do, we can all coexist, and we can all be happy, and we can make the world better. There you go. That's it. Oh, there's some other crazy things that we did, but that's like the highbrow moral.
No, it's great.
Goody memory.
So I'm gonna go off script again. When you were thinking and concepting South of Midnight, did you have an idea of what kind of? I mean, obviously, everybody when the first trailers came out for it, the animation style was incredible. Was that part of the, like, how do we then go from, you know, this concept of this idea to implementing this kind of tech? How do we get there?
Yeah, I think I don't want to give away their process.
Fair enough.
But I mean, clearly it won for animation, and you know, animation director, you know, Brent George and oh my God, Vincent. His last name is escaping me right now. Brilliant. And, you know, our art director, Whitney Clayton, wants to do stop motion feeling, handcrafted, you know, something being a bit off, but still beautiful and, you know, easy enough for the player to attach to. And she achieved an amazing aesthetic. And the animation was part of that. And those guys had to figure it out. And I think ultimately, you can just turn it off if you don't like the stop motion feeling.
Yeah.
Just, boop, turn it off.
It is cool.
But it was important to do it because that was part of the artistic vision. And so was that the answer you were looking for?
Honestly, anything you say is totally fine. I just kind of wanted to know, like, if there was if you knew from day one that it was going to be a stop motion design style, or like, was that a collaborative effort with the team later on? Like,
yeah, I believe Whitney came up with that. And I was like, love it, because I'm a huge Rankin Bass Christmas animated special fan.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can see that in the game.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, people were like, "Oh my God, what are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Santa Claus is coming to town.
Yeah.
I'm Mr. Green Christmas. I'm Mr. Sun. Don't you what? Don't you know? There it is." And that's we got this crazy performance near the very end of the game, and it was everything I dreamed of.
Incredible.
It's like my insanity was made real, and people liked it. So
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
Just say yes. Say yes to rank
Yeah.
Just say yes. Yeah. No, that's really cool. All right, deep cut time. Because in doing research for this, I found an article from Compute, 1991. You wrote a review on Lemmings, where you were talking about essentially how you have to sacrifice lemmings in order to proceed through the puzzles in those games.
Yeah.
Losing units was the quote. Losing units is kind of part of solving those problems.
Mhm.
Do you think that modern games have become too afraid of letting players fail like that?
Personally, yes.
Just say yes.
Yeah,
Just say yes.
I will say yes. I do because, yeah. Oh my God, we don't need AI to do everything for us.
Yeah.
Where is the fun in a game that plays itself? I certainly see the appeal in a game that dials down the difficulty and challenge to the point that you can feel like you're participating, but you're really more there for the story
Right.
than you are for the gameplay. That's okay, but that's not Lemmings. And I loved that game. I loved watching them explode and get ground up, and
Yeah.
people are very sensitive about that. I'm not even sure you could. I'm not sure like a major publisher would publish something like Lemmings now, because of course it would be in HD, and
Yeah.
it would be much gorier if you zoomed
Oh,
in.
yeah.
But DMA Design nailed it with that game.
Yeah.
And it's iconic and emblematic of that era when games were transitioning from so hard and impossible that they're
Yeah.
not fun, but you keep at it because it's the only game you could afford with your allowance.
Right. Yeah.
To something like Lemmings, which was a great balance of challenge and humor and graphics, animation. And then, the industry, it loses its way periodically, and we see, like today, the conflagration, to which I could say you reap what you sow.
Yeah.
You pursued the wrong things in the name of profit, and you lost your way. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to
No.
work on it.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to buy it month after month after month. They want those pure experiences like Lemmings, right? But extended over, I mean, does anybody really want a 120-hour game anymore? No.
I
I'm
didn't
happy
want them
with
when they were
40
really,
or
really
20.
prevalent.
Huh?
Yeah. A nice 15-hour experience to me is way more impactful than a 60-hour game where I'm checking boxes to do stuff.
Yeah, it's so hard to ship anything. Trying to ship a game that constantly surprises and delights you, no matter how good your game loops are.
Yeah.
Those become extremely time consuming to build. They are creatively draining in a lot of cases. So, South of Midnight, for example, we all knew it was supposed to be a shorter game. We were going to make it as long as the story we wanted to tell. And that's what we did. And, I'm a big believer in that. I'm like, don't make your game, don't add, don't add sawdust, just go for the goodness. And we've seen lots of games that embrace that and were exactly the right length. What was it? Twin Sons, the co-op game about two brothers.
Oh, yeah.
Lot platforming and puzzle solving.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Incredible.
Crazy good. And, the mechanic was the message. So
another one I always like to point to is, I don't know if you've played it, but Split Fiction from
I
Hazelight.
haven't.
incredible platforming experience, and the way they handle the co-op, and there was no fluff. Every mechanic was built deliberate, and it was just incredible. Yeah, very cool.
Well, yeah, more like that, please.
Yes, absolutely.
They're always outliers.
For sure. So touching on your design philosophy just a little bit there, after all these things that you worked on and looking back on the timeline, is there an idea about game design that stayed consistent for you that you latched on, that is like a foundation for all the projects you work on?
Oh wow. There are a few. The foundation for game design is you want to in your research, you're looking for things that are real, that you can abstract into sort of like eternal, perpetual fun. And, that becomes your filter for not doing lots of things. I'm like, if I wouldn't enjoy doing this in real life, it's not going in the game. And it's like, that's why in SOCOM, you have short duration stealth sniper setups, but you don't spend 24 hours or more just waiting there for your target.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Which is what Navy SEALs sometimes have to do. And, it was not important to me to simulate long, drawn out sniper situations.
That's why you added victory dances over dead bodies, correct?
Well, no, yes, and no, because it's funny.
Yeah.
But SOCOM 1 came out, and this is a great example of listen to your audience and keep your eyes open. Right away, we started seeing people interrupting animations with a controller to teabag and, flaunt their victory over corpses.
Yeah.
And I was like, we need to embrace this. And people were like, what? Victory dances? And I was like, oh, yes. And then our art director, Russ Phillips, is a great dancer. And he got in the mocap suit and did a bunch of the animations for the victory dances, which we shipped with SOCOM too. I think we were the first, but it's like it's Fortnite's now, I guess.
Exactly.
They invented it.
When you look back, a lot of those things, the pioneer, it's so crazy how some of those mechanics are still prevalent in games today. Some of the biggest games too.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you look at the features or the design and mechanics in a lot of 8-bit games, we're just riffing on those.
Yeah.
We still are. So, I'm happy that people find, inspiration in stuff that I've made, but I'm riffing on stuff that I played the heck out of, on my Commodore 64.
Yeah.
So it's all the same as it ever was. It just sometimes gets better.
Yeah. Very, very cyclical in nature, I would say.
Victory dances over decedents.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Stay professional.
Yes, so thank you. I'm glad. We've all learned something here today.
Yeah, I've learned a ton. I've learned an incredible amount of stuff. It's been amazing.
I want to talk about Orphan Toys a little bit because that's your most recent venture. What pushed you to start something like this, at this stage of your career? Coming off of, South of Midnight, you're in a new venture with Max, who I got to say, what a full circle moment that must be. You guys worked on Meat Puppet in the mid 90s, and now you're coming back together. And I thought that was such a cool anecdotal thing. Like, you guys have taken everything that you guys have learned through both of your tenured careers, and now you want to apply that to potentially the next generation. What pushed you to start that now?
Well, we partly because we don't really enjoy working in, large corporate studio environments, which is not to say that Compulsion was like that at all. Working there and with Microsoft was like a big family kind of feeling, much the way that Zipper and Sony were back in the day. But there comes a point where you need to be the master of your own destiny and to be free to talk about what you're working on. And if you want to call your friends to contribute stuff to your game project, you can, because you're not under that umbrella of a corporate structure.
Yeah.
Also, we looked around and everything's on fire, and everyone's
Yes,
getting
it
laid
is.
off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I kind of know why this happens. I've seen versions of this a few times in the industry. I've never seen so many people be laid off because the industry was never this big.
Yeah.
And if you grow really big, you can fall pretty far, pretty fast.
Hmm.
So what we want to do is take what we've learned and our approach, which we have spent decades developing independently.
Yeah.
Uh, because, I think back to those classes I taught. There's so much mentorship is needed, so much coaching, and just being survivors of an industry that tried to kill us for decades
Yeah.
has got to be worth something.
It is.
And what we want to do it inexpensively. We don't need a lot of money, and we know when enough is enough. So we want to help people make the games that we were lucky enough to make, the kinds of
Yeah.
games, or to make games that will surprise and delight us or somebody else or a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that's really it. And on the side, we're making our own small projects. Um, I, I, I think since I'm a co-founder, I can talk about it, but I won't say too much. But I was talking about the mental attic of all the things that we would talk about doing, but we're too
Yeah.
crazy for a publisher to pick up. Well,
Yeah.
now we can. Babies Are Delicious, Rainbow Unicorn Tea Party, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And short, divergent, wildly absurd, entertaining games.
It's pretty full circle. I mean, your first writing job for a video game was what was it? I Have No Mouth and I Must
Yeah.
Scream, correct?
Yeah.
And what an interesting I guess you could say slightly twisted experience that was, and now to come full circle
Yeah.
At the later stages of your career to now be able to pursue those same kind of things that you had actually started working on way
Yeah.
back then. How
Well,
cool is that?
But it's very cool. And in part, it's because we want to return to the feelings we had when we didn't know what we couldn't do. And if we did it, it was allowed. I mean, most of the things
Yeah.
that I put into I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream absolutely would not be published today. I mean,
Right.
it's just not
Yeah.
going to happen. But we did it, and people are still
Yeah.
playing it, right?
Yeah.
That's and it's something I talked about at the UX Game UX conference last year. It was kind of a recollection of what I learned in my career. And one of the things I learned looking at every game I've made that has been transgenerational, like people play it and
Yeah.
discover it decades on decades. And it's why I think South of Midnight will be played, 20 years from now. People will still,
Mhm.
say, oh, yeah, what was that game my grandfather played about the monsters in the South?
Yeah.
And people will come to it and experience the story and the message. All of the games that have persisted have focused on one emotion. There are other emotions represented because you can't be too one note, but any feature or piece of content that enhanced or supported or pushed forward on that emotion, that's what went in, and everything else would just get filtered down. And now, so I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream was all about despair, and it really was. I mean, it was
Yeah.
an unapologetic parade through all the possible ways people could embrace despair. SOCOM was all about camaraderie and esprit de corps. That was it. And, South of Midnight was about hope. And that in hindsight, that's what I do. I focus on one strong emotion, and it, I guess it's because of, the unstated laws of the universe that it's a rule that holds true every time, but it does seem to.
Very cool.
That's cool. Well, we always like to end the interview with the same question when we speak to game devs, because we like to hope that there's younger aspiring game devs listening to the show, and that would be someone who would definitely tune in to an interview to hear you. So we try to do a little bit of a service to those listeners. What is the one piece of advice you'd give an aspiring game developer coming up in the industry today?
This is going to be an interesting one based on what you've said in this interview so far.
Oh boy. If they're sure this is what they want to do, I think I would tell, well, what would I tell a young version of myself
Yeah.
starting out? Don't believe people that tell you you can't do what you imagine. Because you can, and it may not be exactly the way you imagined it, but you can get something out there, and you will find like-minded people who will support you in the next game, and you will come closer to what your vision of that game was. So it's don't give up, like, to everybody who is in the industry or starting in the industry during the great conflagration of 24, 25, 26, and probably 27.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, don't give up. I mean, games are here to stay, and it needs visionaries and fresh talent to continue. So feed the machine, people. Do it anyway. Just say yes.
Just say yes.
Just say yes. It's cool.
What an incredible wrap up. Ladies and gentlemen, David Sears. I'm so excited that this interview happened.
That was cool.
I've been following your career for a lot of years, and I really do appreciate your time. And I know,
thank you.
I know you again, I know you don't do a lot of interviews. You don't do a lot of social media. So it means a lot that you answered the call and showed up today. I really do appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Guys, welcome back to the lobby, and holy Santa Claus shit, that was awesome, dude.
Yeah.
I loved it so much. I just, reacting to it a little bit, man. One of the things I just wanted to talk about that hit me so hard, and you were just talking about it too, is like game dev is one of the careers with the sacrifices, and like how I wanted to make the correlation, but I didn't get a chance to, like how he set up his college curriculum to be almost like a Navy SEALs buds class, where it like weeds out the people that aren't going to be able to cut it.
Yeah.
And it just hit it with so much information, and just talking about how game dev is just an all-in career with sacrifices, and it's not for everybody.
Yep.
And a lot of people that think they want to get into it actually probably don't.
Yeah.
And that was like, holy cow.
It's impressive to me when you think about the career, and obviously, like I was doing quite a bit of research for this, to watch how he came from writing game reviews, where he's obviously having to play the games, understand the mechanics, and then write about them, to then jumping into writing narrative for, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Like that was a game in the mid 90s. So he jumped into that, his first writing gig, and then 30 years later, he's writing and creative director and design for a game like South at Midnight. It's just crazy watching his early iteration and how he kind of took that and built an entire career off it. So cool.
And the interesting plot twist where he's like, would you believe that the creator of SOCOM would get sick when they tried to play shooters and didn't touch them at all, and then made SOCOM? Like, just a one of one guy, man. Just an interesting and super talented, intelligent guy.
Just say yes.
I wasn't intimidated at all.
No, absolutely not. I definitely wasn't very nervous leading up to this interview all morning. Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, I wasn't practicing circular breathing to try to calm my heart rate during the interview at all. No, it's all fine. It's great.
No, it was a great interview, man.
It was really cool. And then I also learned that I'm going to start calling dead people decedents. I'm going to be professional.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So you learn something every day, and that's my thing for today.
Yep. Very cool.
But yeah, man, I don't think I have any much else to say, and let the interview kind of stand on its own, because it was cool. Such an honor to be a part of it.
Yep, absolutely. Guys, if you enjoyed that interview, please do us a favor. Leave a 5-star review wherever you're watching, listening. Leave a like on the video and let us know your thoughts wherever you can leave comments, whether it's Spotify, YouTube, wherever. We want to hear from you guys. We appreciate you listening. This has been your Push to Talk podcast. This is episode 17, by the way. We're 17 episodes in. We're killing it.
Just cooking.
Skyrocketing. Guys, we'll see you on the next one.